All right. Well, we're recording here, and although we have never used the new Zoom to Facebook architecture, we're trusting that you're seeing us also on Facebook Live. So, welcome. Here we are at another Friday forum, a couple of days after the big relaxation of restrictions here in this COVID era. And I'm so pleased to not be talking about COVID-19 with my esteemed panel of guests and dear friends here. I'm John Boquette, Associate Editor of the Newtown Bee. And I have to say, from probably the second or third day that I came to work here almost 17 years ago, I walked into the Newtown Health District and introduced myself and let them know that I regarded the professionals and others who worked there that they were going to be one of my most valuable sources, and in fact, that has remained to be true for my entire time here. Both Donna Culbert, the Newtown Health District Director, and Administrative Assistant Maureen Shaler have both been fantastic resources, along with their coworkers all these years. And I dare say we've had exceptional and robust health reporting as a result of this great relationship that we have. And we're continuing it today with a brand new friend. I'm so pleased to be back in touch with Dr. Gudars Malay. He is the Director of Passive Tick Surveillance and the Passive Tick Surveillance Program at the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station, or the CAES. And he's also Associate Clinical Professor of Epidemiology of Microbial Diseases at the Yale School of Public Health. Dr. Malay, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting.
So once again, Dr. Malay, if you would just please, we're going to need you to speak just a little bit louder to make sure everybody can hear everything and the important information you're giving, as well as showing. We're going to kick things off with Dr. Malay. He's going to give us a brief 8 or 9 minute PowerPoint presentation that's going to get us into our conversation today. But we hope by the time we end this presentation and this webcast, around 12:35, 12:40. Everyone who's watching or who tunes in later on the Newtown Bees YouTube channel will have a great amount of information and resources on becoming more aware and hopefully preventing tick-borne diseases that you may acquire from the number of ticks that are beginning to come out and populate here in Connecticut. So, Dr. Malay, please, it's all yours. Come out and
Is it good?
very good. We just want to hear you nice and loud.
Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to talk about the public health importance and, in other words, the plague of ticks and tick-borne diseases in Connecticut and throughout the northeastern United States. As some of you may have learned during the past 13 years, specifically from 2004 to 2016, the number of disease cases as a result of tick, mosquito, and flea activity have tripled. However, great majority of these disease cases are due to tick activity, and with some estimates, the number of diseases resulted from tick-borne diseases reaches greater than 90%. Here in Connecticut, we have about 15 tick species. However, up until recently, only 3 tick species were of importance. They were black-legged tick, American dog tick, and Lone Star tick. However, Black-legged tick constitutes greater than 85% of ticks in our state, followed by American dog tick at around 12 to 15%, and American, Lone Star tick at 2.5% currently. However, I have to add that in recent years, we have seen an increases in the activity of Lone Star tick. As an example, we used to have only 0.2% of ticks in our laboratory or in our state being Lone Star tick, and in recent years, it has reached to 3.9%. This tick species is an important tick species involved in transmission of a number of important diseases, including ehrlichiosis, rickettsiosis, a few new viruses, including urban virus and heartland virus. It is also associated with famous red meat allergy. In 2018, for the first time, we reported established population of Lone Star tick in Connecticut in Fairfield County. And in 2019 and 2020, we reported further establishment of this tick species in Fairfield County and New Haven County. In some areas, we have heavy infestation of Lone Star tick. This is a picture of a deer that was heavily infested and eventually succumbed to the disease in the Norwalk region. In 2017, a new tick species was reported in the United States that is called longhorn tick. And this tick was reported from New Jersey, and within a few years, this tick has now established population in 15 states, including Connecticut. It is a serious livestock pest, particularly in New Zealand, and its involvement in transmission of a number of disease agents have been documented. I have to note that in 2020, late 2020, we discovered established population of this tick species in 2 locations, again in Fairfield County. And this year we surveyed the area and we found out that this tick is quite prolific, and it has established population up to a point that when we enter into the area, it took maybe a few minutes, our entire clothes were covered by this activity, this tick activity. We also, in 2020, we reported the first established population of another tick species, that is the Gulf Coast tick. Gulf Coast tick, as the name implies, is native to southeastern United States and Gulf of Mexico region. And up until recently, the northernmost established population of this tick species has been Delaware, but in 2020, we reported the population of this tick species from Fairfield County again, and I paid another visit to the site just this year, and we noticed that this tick is still active. In other words, it has established population. And this tick, when we collected the specimens of this Gulf Coast tick and we tested in collaboration with CDC folks, we found out that 30% of these specimens are infected with a disease agent called Rickettsia parkeri that causes a disease similar to Rocky Mountain spotted fever, but a rather milder one. So in our state and throughout the United States, these several tick species are involved in transmission of a number of important human and veterinary diseases. Among them, as you all know, are Lyme disease, babesiosis, and anaplasmosis. Powassan virus, and a number of other important diseases. In our state, we have found out that the most important month with regards to tick activity is the month of June, when nymphal Exodus scapularis or black-legged ticks reach a peak. And this is the time historically we have had greater number of Lyme disease and other tick-borne diseases reported. And the reason for that is that this tick species, this tick instar is juvenile, and they are small size of a poppy seed, and quite often we don't find them promptly. And then we have another two peak activities. This is for the adult black-legged ticks that occur in April, May, and later on in October and November. If you want to know exactly who are at greater risk, I would say children of 4 years and younger kids. Some of these kids, obviously, they are outdoor and they are playing in yards or other places, but there are good percentage of these people, these children that are younger than 1 year old. And the reason that they are becoming infested with ticks is because we bring dogs to inside, we bring the dogs outdoor, and after they return to indoor, they, for some reason, those ticks that are on these dogs, they find their ways to children. In the past several years, we have noticed that the number of ticks are increasing, and also the prevalence of infection with Lyme disease pathogen is increasing. We are now standing at 38, sometimes 40% of all ticks we have, they are infected with Lyme disease pathogen. In addition to infection with Lyme disease pathogen, we do see black-legged ticks are being infected with more than one disease agent simultaneously, and you can imagine how complicated it becomes when it comes to treatment of those who were bitten by these ticks that are infected with more than one disease agent. And in recent years, we have seen up to 6.6% of ticks being infected with 2 or sometimes 3 tick-borne diseases simultaneously. So in conclusion, what we are facing these days and these years are, we are seeing changes in frequency, abundance, and population density of ticks that increases the risk of human infection with tick-borne diseases. We are seeing geographic and temporal distribution of tick species. Range expansion is one of those changes that we are seeing, as we have seen with Lone Star tick and the Gulf Coast tick. We are also seeing range expansion and introduction of invasive ticks, including the Asian longhorn ticks. We are seeing changes in the dynamics of activity of different tick species. We don't know how the interaction of different tick species will eventually play out, whether one tick will be able to push the other tick to the side and become a dominant species. And we don't know, because these ticks are involved in transmission of several diseases, what disease or how many of these diseases eventually will become prevalent in our state, and whether the landscape of tick-borne diseases will change. We are seeing the prevalence of pathogen infection and co-infection is increasing, and also we are seeing new ticks and tick-borne pathogens are emerging at unprecedented rates. I stop at this point. I let you to run the panel, please.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Malay, for that very informative, and the visuals really helped. I recall when we talked on the phone, it was kind of difficult to keep up with you, but I'll let you wrap up with these conclusions that you wanted to cover.
Is it, do you have on the screen right now?
No, the conclusions went, but I was kind of getting the gist of it, that tick-borne diseases are going to continue to be a major health concern, and additional pathogens are going to emerge, as well as the range of expansion growing into potentially other areas of Connecticut. Were there any other major points that you'd like to share with our viewers before we give you a couple of minutes of a break and speak to our health district representatives?
Sure, please proceed with my colleagues at the health department, and then whenever time arrives, then I will talk to you.
Okay, if I could ask you to clear your desktop from the display, then we'll go to Donna Culbert and Maureen. Donna, I kind of want to go through sort of the timeline of things in regards to the health district's role in your role in tick collections and intake stats in comparison to previous years. How are things looking now? I know when we did our report now almost a month ago, you were already looking at, around double, a little over double the amount of ticks being taken in right here in Newtown, right?
Yes, I mean, right now, I think we're at about 81 specimens submitted. And we were only about 62 last year, about this time. And it does fluctuate a little bit. Some of it's going to depend on people's activity and the weather, and we've had some great weather. So Maureen knows firsthand how much activity we have with folks submitting ticks, because we have a lot of great opportunity to interact with the outdoors. And what I am seeing, we're still looking at about 59% positive right now, with a 41% negative, but also about 41% of those positive are co-infected. So they have Lyme and could also have bacteria for anaplasmosis or babesia. So unfortunately, these ticks are carrying more than one pathogen. 40, right now, 40% of our specimens. I would want to add there, though, that the majority, I think maybe all of the ticks that we've seen so far have been adults. As Dr. Malawi pointed out, we're really running right into the nymph season, where we will see a lot more nymphs for people who are able to find them on them, which is part of their challenge. So the adults are more likely to have some infection because they've had more opportunity to feed on an infected host. So that's a whole, that's a part of the adults give us a higher opportunity to be infected. The nymphs give us a higher opportunity to be infected because they're so hard to see. They're so hard to detect. And by the time you do, they've had a meal.
Yeah.
And again, we are ahead in how many ticks are coming in. And I think part of it's great weather. I think part of it is we have great opportunities to spend time outdoors, spend time with our pets. As we see here in town, and particularly up on Fairfield Hills, lots of dogs and families, and so we know that that's a good healthy dynamic for the family, not so great for tick exposure.
And tons of both established trail and open space systems here in Newtown, as well as anybody whose land borders on any ungroomed landscaping. The closer you get to the edge of that yard, the more prevalence the pet or any human has, I guess, to get attacked. Dr. Malawi showed that great graphic that reinforces his assertion that there's no such thing as a tick season anymore, given global warming and the way that the nymph season is kind of sandwiched in between the two adult active seasons. This whole idea of it only being a problem for a couple months in the summer is out the window. It is really going to be a year-round issue. But the other thing that you mentioned to me, Donna, in the report that we did in the Bee last month was that earlier this month, I should say, is the fact that the nymphs sometimes or oftentimes will attach and feed and then drop off and then grow to adult ticks that could then attach and feed again, whether it's on a dog or on a person. So right now, that nymph cycle that we're coming into in June is going to be of particular concern. Do either you or Dr. Malay have any advice on the best ways to detect these tiny little sesame seeds sized ticks?
Well, I'll offer that. I mean, it really is checking. I mean, it's really important when people have spent time outdoors, and that's part of the last message, is to come in and bathe, or at a minimum, take off the clothing that they were playing in, gardening in, hiking in, whatever it is, to take that off. Ideally, shower or bathe and look, because that's our single most important opportunity. I mean, if you can't prevent them being on you, the next best step is getting them off as quickly as possible before they've had a chance to attach and feed. But the nymphs are really hard. My eyes obviously are getting older, and so they're really hard to see. And it's just really taking a look, particularly in those areas that are a little elusive, whether they're, full armpits, behind the knee, in the hairline, clothing line, where pants meet, or a bra line, or, where there's edges. But they can be anywhere. They can be in an open area on your body as well. We really have to look for them.
Very good. Maureen, can you give folks that are tuning in or who will watch later an idea of what they're going to experience, and to you and Donna, how they should best preserve the tick sample that they're going to try to bring in for testing, so that it can be tested successfully?
Well, we always recommend that they place the tick in a plastic sandwich bag. A lot of times people will put little notes in it with their name and address and phone number, but oftentimes we'll write on the bag anyway their name, because we give them a number to track them. Sometimes people put blades of grass in the sandwich bag in order to keep it moist. I don't know if that's still protocol, but on occasion they do that. There also is on our webpage now the tick submission form. So it does kind of make it easier for people to fill out the form before they get here, and attach both of them together and present it at the counter so that we can mail it out and record it.
In order to most successfully develop a testing result, is it critical for them to have the entire tick preserved, or as much of it as possible? Because sometimes with tweezers or someone who's not experienced in removing ticks, they might actually compromise the insect itself.
So I would like to add a few points that Donna and Maureen mentioned. The first thing is that I would like to add a few more data, recent data from our laboratory, that they might have an idea about what we are seeing in Connecticut in comparison to Newtown.
Dr. Malay, could I just ask you to speak a little bit louder? I'm sorry.
Like to add some data in order for Donna and Maureen to compare their data to the entire state. So far, we have received nearly 2,000 ticks this year. And if we want to compare to the previous years, in the past few years, we have had an average of about 1,300 ticks, except for 2017, that was another high tick activity year. With regards to tick infection, it is correct that nymphs pose greater risk, as Donna explained rather nicely, because they are small and we tend to overlook and we are not able to properly find them and remove them promptly. With regards to infection, we have the average infection rate. Our historic data indicates that the average infection rate in adults has been around 32 to 33%, and in nymphs, 22%. And as Donna mentioned, because adults will have one more chance in their lifetime to bite an infected host and acquire infection. With regards to how to submit the ticks, I understand very much that people and health department are trying very hard to submit their ticks in a intact situation so that we could test them. Although in some literature and some health departments, they advocate using a Ziploc bag or sandwich bags. With all due respect, I would like to encourage health department and residents to put their ticks in a crush-proof container, like a small prescription medication or prescription lenses container, and put that one in a padded envelope. That would guarantee that ticks will not be lost and will not be crushed, so that will not pose any risk to the laboratory staff who are handling the ticks, and also it guarantees the best outcome of the test result.
So Dr. Malay, let me interrupt you there if I may. That advice could also apply to the individual from Newtown who is removing the tick from themselves or their loved one or another person. They can put it into an old a pill bottle or a prescription bottle or some type of a hard edged container versus into a Ziploc bag.
Absolutely, but I also understand some health departments are having some limitations with regard to financial resources to send those to us. So they can still, if they want to send in Ziploc bag, they can do that, provided that they can put it in a padded envelope so that that tick would not be crushed. With regards to how intact a tick could be, it is important for us to have at least the abdomen of the tick. So if the abdomen is missing, there is no point for us to test the tick, because in great majority of cases, we are able to detect the pathogen inside the tick gut. And again, we also would like to suggest people not to put their ticks in any kind of liquid or oil or anything, because that would also interfere with our testing. And more importantly, when they put ticks in liquids, ticks tend to absorb the liquid, and that would interfere with our work in order to determine the engorgement status of the tick. In other words, to determine for how long that tick has been on people. As you all know, it is important for us to determine that indirectly tells us what is the real risk of infection from that particular tick.
Very good. I thank you for that input. Just to finish the process with the Newtown Health District. So Maureen, people can go to the Newtown Health District page on the municipal website, newtown-ct.gov, and they could find a form to complete, to attach or include with whatever type of container, preferably a bottle or a hard-edged container versus a Ziploc bag, but whatever container they provide that to you, and they just attach it or bring it in with the form. And it's as simple as that. You simply greet them at the desk, you log them in and take the sample, and then follow up when and if that sample comes back positive.
Oh, we do that. Yes, they can submit their sample and their form here at the counter. I pretty much do that every single day, or one of the staff people here do it.
Mhm.
We do keep records of our tick samples and the results. Normally, and Dr. Malay is very kind, his staff, as well as himself, always contact those samples that are positive. They are emailed. And I will follow up if the tick sample is positive. I will give them a phone call just to make sure that they have in fact seen their email.
And is there a ballpark amount of time in which the Newtown resident or the person turning in the tick should expect to be notified if it comes back positive? Because obviously, or apparently, you're not contacting every person that brings in a tick, just the ones that are positive.
That's correct. And so pretty much as soon as I get the results, I will record them and start making phone calls.
What's the
Because-
turnaround? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
What's the turnaround time been in recent weeks between when you turn in the tick and when you get the sample, with the understanding that that could fluctuate significantly on any given day or week?
Oh, it's pretty timely. But with the amount of ticks, as Dr. Malawi said, he's receiving per week or per month, I'm usually telling people from the time that they submitted that it's about 2 weeks. But a
Okay.
lot of times, it will come back quicker than that. And that's evident by my in-basket.
And all the
Friday.
and all the contacts are made by email and or phone?
That's correct.
To add a point to
Yes.
Maureen's discussion on this regard,
Yep.
is that we have tried very hard, as you all know, to limit the test time to 2 to 3 days. These days, even during busy time, we have worked very hard to have the result within 2 to 3 days. However, the challenge is that when people submit their ticks, by the time we get it, it is already a week past. Sometimes it takes longer. That is why the turnaround time may come to 2 to 3 weeks rather than days. So I want to re-emphasize that we are getting the result within days or 2 to 3 days, and we are sending the result not only to the health department, but also to the residents immediately by email. It is very kind of Maureen and her colleagues at the health departments that they are taking initiative and they are making phone calls to make sure that they have seen their emails.
Okay, so there's dual channels of contact, both from CAES as well as the health district. So there's an aggressive attempt to ensure the people bringing in the samples know that that tick is infected.
Absolutely.
Very good. Great. I just am checking the time here. We've got just a few minutes left if we want to keep this somewhat on schedule. I did have a couple questions from someone, actually another great resource to the Bee here, another esteemed individual who we work with, Neil Chowdhury, who is asking if if the ticks are removed prior to engorgement, can you still get infected?
Yes, it depends upon what kind of pathogens or what type of pathogen we are talking. It is believed that for Lyme disease, a tick should be engaged in blood feeding from 24 to 36 hours. And anything less than 24 hours, ticks will have a limited chance to successfully transmit the Lyme disease pathogen. And it is similar to some other pathogens, but it is not the case with all tick-borne pathogens. Some of the tick-borne pathogens can be transmitted within a few hours or even within an hour.
Okay. And I don't know if anyone can answer this question or who has the expertise, but that the individual is also asking if a single application of like a tick spray, whether it's done by the homeowner or commercial, is enough to control ticks year round, or if you're advising multiple applications of whatever type of spraying that may be done on a property to reduce or eliminate the tick populations.
The answer is no, because ticks have 2 to 3 year life cycle, and every season, every period, we have cohorts of 2 years, sometimes 3 years, somehow overlapping, and therefore one single application of pesticide in the backyard will not be sufficient to keep the ticks at the bay, and we have to continue spraying maybe every 3 weeks. That is not sustainable. We have some other approaches that we could take in order to keep tick population under control.
Very good. Well, at the end of the presentation, we'll just ask for a couple of websites or resources. We also had another question about, let's see, should I be clicking all the ticks? Asking about whether or not all of the ticks should be collected, or I'm assuming that if a mom finds 5 or 6 ticks, or even more than one on a child, when the child comes in, should they bring all of those ticks in for testing or just one?
Absolutely. They all should be submitted to us. And if they are removed from one individual, in order to save time, we sometimes test those ticks in pool. In other words, if we have 6 ticks, we might put 3 ticks in one tube and another 3 and another tube, and do 2 tests rather than doing 6 tests.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Sally and Neil, for your questions. We want to wrap up with something else that I learned from the Newtown Health District, a system that they have been promoting now for well over a decade called BLAST. You may have heard of it. If you've been reading the Bee, we certainly talk about it at least once a year since Donna and Maureen and the Newtown Health District have been promoting it. Donna, could you quickly review the BLAST system, and so people can perhaps apply that in their own situation?
Sure. BLAST was developed by the Richfield Health Department, so I want to make sure I give them the correct credit for doing that. It's an acronym that stands for 5 simple, when we want to think simple ways for people to be able to take charge, 5 simple things that people can do to help reduce tick bites and ultimately tick-borne disease. The B stands for bathe, which I talked about a little bit earlier. Bathe within 2 hours of coming in from outdoors, because that's when you have the greatest opportunity to get ticks off of you. L is for look, to look for those ticks. And actually I add look for ticks or the rash every day, because you may have missed the tick, but you may see a rash that you might otherwise have not thought about. And that's not always happens, but it's a telltale sign of a tick bite. A is to apply repellent, and to follow directions on the repellent, can or whatever they're using, to make sure they follow directions appropriately. I used to say the A was to avoid tick habitats, but that's pretty hard to do. S is to spray your yard or safeguard your yard. So whether you spray or sometimes there are environments which aren't appropriate for spraying, depending on where you're situated. There are safeguards that you can take, there's different things you can do in your yard, landscaping techniques, kind of like wood chip or barriers that kind of create that kind of take the effectiveness of that transition zone from the yard to the wooded area and make it
making a
less tick
buffer.
friendly. Yes, exactly. So that's for the S, and then T is to treat your pets, because we, as Dr. Mallay's, pointed out to us, we love our pets, but they're also kind of a risk factor for us, partly because they can bring ticks to us, and also we can be exposed to more ticks when we're out with them. So blast, bathe, look, apply, spray, treat. And you will see that at our blast table that Maureen helps put together out in the municipal center here. And we also try to promote that, it's on our website. We promote it in the B, we just try to get that message out there.
And as Dr. Malay pointed out through his graphics earlier in the presentation, the combination of having pets that go in and out, and children, very young children under the age of 1 year old, that's when you need to be acutely aware of doing regular tick checks or watching for the rash. Correct, Dr. Malay?
Absolutely.
Very good. So once again, to access any of the resources for the Newtown Health District, it's newtown-ct.gov. And then you can go to the departments or the government tab and click through to the Newtown Health District website. And Dr. Malay, is it ct.gov/CAES to get to your division?
Correct.
Very good. And it would take us another 30 minutes to review the list of resources that Dr. Malay and his team has available for you. But I could tell you from doing my research for the articles that we have been using his office for, it is quite robust. Tons of links, tons of downloads and graphic representations, really a robust source of information for anyone who wants to kind of pick up the baton from our webcast today and carry it to be sure that they are minimizing or even mitigating the possibility of them or a loved one or someone in their household acquiring a tick-borne disease. We hope our webcast today and the resource of this on our Newtown B YouTube channel is of value to you. If it is, feel free to let us know. You can always email me, John, JOHN, @theb.com. And of course, if you need to contact the Newtown Health District, you can always call them at 203-270-4291. Right, guys?
Yes.
Okay. I want to thank you all for being part of the program today and our webcast on tick-borne disease awareness and prevention. Our esteemed guest, Dr. Gudars Malay, the Director of Passage Tick Surveillance Program at the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station and Associate Clinical Professor of Epidemiology of Microbial Diseases at the Yale School of Public Health. Our Regional Health Director, Donna Colbert, taking care of us here in Newtown as well as in Roxbury and Bridgewater. Our neighbors in the district, and her assistant, Maureen Shadler. Thank you all for being part of the webcast today. And we wish you luck in hoping that we all remain tick-free and our broadcast or webcast is going to help with folks experiencing ticks on their properties or where they recreate here in Greater Newtown. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. John.
Thank you.
Bye.